The absolutely absurd amount of information in this video would not have been possible without Flor de Andromeda, who created the original version of this iceberg and helped me out when I inevitably got stumped in my research. CLANNAD Man, whose expertise on all things key was invaluable for shedding light on some of the more obscure stuff on this iceberg. If you're at all interested in key, pay attention to what this man is working on. There's also Blue Solar, who made this video happen to begin with by notifying me about Flor's iceberg on Reddit a few months back. There are other people who I'm going to thank throughout the video, also Patreon. Alright, let's do this. Hey, have you guys heard about the time Fuko got a police officer fired in real life? Yeah, me neither. There are so many fascinating and weird fun facts about CLANNAD that I couldn't help but make a full-fledged video about them. Consider this a bonus episode for CLANNAD is Perfect for me, as I'll be tying up a lot of loose ends before we embark on the final route in the game. Also, I know that for these iceberg videos, people usually have clever and funny names for each tier, but I'm neither of those things, so instead you're getting WikiHow's recipe for making Dongo from scratch. Keep in mind that spoilers for CLANNAD will be discussed, and let's get started. Tier 1. Mix the tofu and sweet rice flour in a clean bowl. Visual novel. This is the source material for CLANNAD, released on April 28, 2004 by Key. It was their third visual novel release, the first two being Canon and Air. Today it's available on all modern platforms except for Xbox thanks to Sekai Project and later Prototype. Sekai Project's Kickstarter funded the 2015 Steam release where they were the publisher, and for the 2018 PS4 and Switch releases, the keys were handed to Prototype. Illusionary World. The Illusionary World is an integral part of CLANNAD's story, and you'll be keeping up with it frequently throughout your journey. It follows a girl and a sentient robot made out of junk as they attempt to leave the world together and go someplace more warm and happy with lots of people in it. It's a big old metaphor for the main story, and the two are tied together at the end, so make sure you pay attention to it. KyoAni Anime. In 2007, Kyoto Animation began the finale of their trilogy of key visual novel adaptations by turning CLANNAD into an anime. It had 2 seasons. The first one covered Fuko, Kotomi, and Nagasa's routes from the visual novel with an OVA adapting Tomoyo's route. The second season, titled CLANNAD After Story, covered the baseball route, Mei's route, Masai's route, Yukine's route, Komura's route, and After Story. 3 OVAs were released for this season. The first covered Kyo's route, the second adapted Nagasa's story from CLANNAD's side stories, and the third was a recap of the entire series narrated by Tomoya, with an extra little bonus scene at the end. This episode also confirms to us that Tomoya remembers the bad ending world where Nagasa, Ushio, and presumably himself pass away. This gives us a grand total of 49 episodes. And yes, as I covered in depth in my last video, Cap A is nowhere to be found in this show. Movie. 1 month before KyoAni's adaptation began airing, Toei Animation made an animated movie based on CLANNAD. It was directed by legendary director Osamu Dezaki, and it takes a lot of liberties with CLANNAD's story, aka it sucks. Wait, are you allowed to be biased in an iceberg video? Sorry, hold on. This movie exists. Side Stories. CLANNAD Side Stories is a short anthology featuring many of CLANNAD's characters both before and after the events of the visual novel. It was released in Japan in 2 parts back in 2010 and was brought over to the West in 2016 thanks to Sekai Project's Kickstarter reaching its second stretch goal. It plays like a drama CD more than anything. There's no player input, you just sit back and listen while reading the text. Tomoyo After. Tomoyo After is a sequel to Tomoyo's route in CLANNAD released in 2005. You can buy it on Steam and Switch today, but it'll be the all-ages version without any of the 18+ scenes, because unlike CLANNAD, Tomoyo After had those originally. Tier 2. Separate the dough into about 30 small round balls. Gay for Sunahara. This refers to the secret Sunahara ending in CLANNAD where the player must meet and reject the routes of several female characters before being left with no one but Sunahara. He'll ask Tomoya if he thinks he's handsome enough to be a model, and you gotta say yes if you want the ending. It's also worth an achievement, so make sure you do it when you play the game. Atsuko Okazuki. She is Tomoya's mother, the one who died from a car accident when he was very little. We know next to nothing about her, but the CLANNAD movie of all things allowed us to catch a glimpse of her with this picture. The funny thing is, she kind of looks like Nagasa, deepening the parallels between Tomoya and his father further. Nice touch. Irish band name. So CLANNAD is also the name of a 1970s Irish band that, as of right writing is still touring to this day. As the story goes, Jun Maeda thought that the word CLANNAD meant family in Irish and used it as the title of this game about family. It doesn't actually mean that, but that's a different entry on the Iceberg, so we'll come back to that. Mangas. Believe it or not, there was a manga series for CLANNAD all the way back in 2005. With story and art by Masaki Juri, it covered the entirety of Nagasa's route and after story in 8 volumes. I own them all, but cannot read them because they were never released in English. There is an unfinished fan translation out there though, if you want to get an idea for what this manga was all about. There's also like 5 other CLANNAD manga out there. One of them started in 2007 by a mangaka named Shaw, and they appear to be in this weird horizontal format. If the cover art is any indication though, these might actually be really good. Then you have the short-lived CLANNAD, Hikari Mimamoru Sakamichi Day, which is another retelling of the main story. And finally, 2 one-shots adapting Tomoyo's route and Tomoyo After respectively, both written by Yukiko Sumiyoshi. There's technically one more out there, but we'll get to that later in the Iceberg. Akio wants to kill Botan. This is one of the lesser-known running jokes in this story. Every time Botan and Akio interact with each other, Akio makes it very clear that he wants to eat him. While asking Tomoya to walk Botan home from school, Akio tells him to make sure to watch out for cars, crows, and a baker with a menacing look to him. Later on in After Story, Ushio refers to Botan as Nabe, saying that that's what Akio calls him. Nabe means hot pot, which is a type of stew. Yeah. Heartbeat Academy. Oh hell yeah. So this is some stupid choose your own adventure book that Sunohara keeps in his room that the player can complete for an achievement. It starts with a guy trying to ask a girl out at school, but quickly devolves into a zombie apocalypse with so many intentionally frustrating insta-kills that nobody would ever see coming. The best part about this whole gag is Sunohara saying that he was enthralled by it for hours. I recommend viewing every option because they're all gold, but if you want to get to the end as fast as possible, choose Watch or Walk Away, Keep Watching, Confess, Shake Her Off, Go with Steve, Fight on Your Own, Ignore It, then Go Left. Kaginado. Kaginado is a series of short episodes revolving around the casts of CLANNAD, Little Busters, Air, Canon, and Rewrite interacting with each other. It is the greatest thing ever made by man, and if you are familiar with some or most of these stories, I can't recommend it enough. Also, Season 2 added Angel Beats, which made it even better. Fuko's Light Orb. As it turns out, you don't get a light orb from Fuko's route. In my Fuko video, I said that if you don't date Fuko, then you won't get her light orb. In reality, you just don't get her achievement. Fuko's light orb comes later on in After Story. I pinned a comment correcting myself to that video, but I don't know how many people actually read that, so I'm saying it here. Sorry about that. Tier 3. Bring a large pot of water to a boil on the stovetop. Kotomi is autistic. This is a very popular fan theory, and that's about it. Sorry that this isn't a long one, but I don't have much to add to the discussion. Sanai's bread gag is an act. This refers to the often forgotten implied truth that Akio and Sanai originally began doing their famous bread gag to make Nagisa laugh. It helps keep things lively and happy, not only for her, but for the neighborhood as well, so they've kept at it since. The Dandelion Girl. This is a short story written by Robert F. Young in 1961. It's important to CLANNAD because it was the main inspiration for Kotomi's route, and you'd already be well acquainted with it if you saw my Kotomi video. Komura's route. Fun fact, I cut this route from my Tomoyo video for the sake of pacing, so I'm going to talk about it now since this is a big info dump plus tying up loose ends thing. Komura, if you don't remember, is the old teacher who looked after Tomoya and Sunohara a lot throughout their years in high school. In a very short route that ends with Tomoya letting someone else take the last shot in basketball, locking us out of Nagasa's route, we learn that Komura intentionally pushed Tomoya and Sunohara together so that they could become friends, thinking that they wouldn't be okay with getting kicked out of school if they had a friend who went there. It worked, and when Tomoya and Sunohara graduate, they both express their thanks to Komura as they move on to the real world. There are some really nice bits of characterization here, where we learn that Komura used to be a total hard ass who taught a ton of delinquents in his day, contrasting with the snarky and playful approach he always seemed to take with these two. He also retires the year that they graduate, almost as if he could tell that by pushing these two screw-ups through high school, he'd finally come to the end of his long journey. What a great little story. I love this route. Shut the hell up, dude? KyoAni censorship. I'm not sure what this is referring to specifically, but there were a few things from the visual novel that were toned down in the anime adaptation. Fight scenes are much less violent. Like, for example, you'll notice that blood is not pouring out of these two gentlemen as they fight like it does in the visual novel. Some scenes are much less suggestive. For example, breaking Yukine's storage shed spell only requires Tomoya to remove his shirt in the anime, while in the visual novel he has to take off his pants. There were also some bad words that were taken out of certain scenes, that kind of thing. Funny thing is, it isn't even the only version of CLANNAD that was censored in some way. Translating for CLANNAD. I'd like to take a moment to thank you, the YouTube commenters, because this next segment wouldn't have been possible without you. More specifically, great name. And his buddy who actually did the translation and localization for the Kyo and Kappei routes in the Steam version of the game. He personally wrote the pig shit joke that split my sides open when I first read it, making him my new personal hero. Anyways, they were kind enough to let me ask some questions about localizing the game, the full thread of which is in the comment section of the Kyo video. Here are some of the cool bits of info I learned. When translating CLANNAD for the Steam version, there were 5 total translators and a small number of editors. He wasn't 100% sure how long the whole process took, but he believes it took somewhere between 6 to 7 months to translate the entire script. This is probably why this game cost $45. It took a lot more work than most people give it credit for. The reason several scenes were altered in the Switch and PS4 versions of the game to be less risque or vulgar was because of the publisher change from Sekai to Prototype. Also, the ESRB ended up making some demands too. This led to the removal of the greatest joke in the history of man, as well as some other stuff like Tomoya slipping Ryo some tongue. Storage shed scenes. Speaking of risque stuff from CLANNAD, meet the storage shed scenes. There were 5 in total, one with Nagisa, one with Akio, one with Tomoyo, one with Kyo, and one with Sunohara. The premise is Yukine has Tomoya do a spell that puts him in a classic locked room scenario with whoever he's thinking about when the spell begins. Kyo's is almost identical to how it is in the anime, but it's still worth checking out regardless. If only to bring you ever closer to completing the Dangopedia. Nagisa and Tomoyo's are definitely the most erotic of the bunch. The situation being they accidentally fall into the shed because the baseball team hits a line drive right at them, and then something heavy falls on top so they're stuck there. In Nagisa's one, Tomoya has to convince her to pull down his pants while they're on top of each other so he can break the spell, and in Tomoyo's he does it himself, making her very confused, and then she's all disappointed when the door opens because you can guess why. Oh, also, while recording footage for Tomoyo's, I remembered something else. When you come back to April 17th after completing the game, the animation for Sunohara getting kicked by Tomoyo will change, and his face will gradually become more dented and distorted as it continues. There's even new dialogue that addresses it, and the KyoAni anime followed suit. It's a fun little Easter egg. Sunohara's storage shed scene is a bit of a filler one for if you can't make up your mind, but it's still pretty funny regardless. And finally, we come to the undisputed king of comedy, Akio Furukawa. This fucking madman ends up convincing Tomoya that he's in the mafia and it's been years since he last saw his daughter. They play it completely seriously, and Tomoya never figures out that he just had a gun because he plays laser tag. Also, Akio blows up the door to get out of the shed. The next day, Tomoya tells Nagisa her father's final message to her, and not even here does he realize that this was all one big misunderstanding. Unironically, one of CLANNAD's best bits, and it's locked behind one of the most obscure sets of choices you could ever make. What a fantastic game this is. Oh, and if you were wondering why I'm using the Steam version of the game here, embarrassingly enough, I don't actually have my PS4 disc with me right now. That's what I get for buying physical media. 4-Koma. The CLANNAD 4-Koma manga is just that, a collection of 4-panel shorts featuring the cast of CLANNAD. I don't really like 4-Koma, but some of this stuff is genuinely pretty good. It was a collaborative effort featuring well over a dozen mangaka, and it was released just 3 months after the visual novel came out in Japan. Nagisa's favorite food. Most people assume it's onpan because arguably her most iconic line involves her wishing to eat it, but reality is not so simple. She just says onpan because that's usually all that's left by the time it's her turn to order in the cafeteria. Her actual favorite food is pork cutlet. Tier 4. Drop the dough balls into the boiling water. Jet the Saito. Jet Saito is a really weird character who can only be seen by choosing one one of two very specific sets of choices, and here they are. The Saito characters are a running gag among Key's franchises, as some version of him appears in almost all of their stories. You have Mask the Saito from Little Busters, Fishing Saito from Angel Beats, Flying Saito from Charlotte, and Saito the Hopper from Tomoyo After, just to name a few. Okay, let's see. Sorarado? I don't know. This is a remix album for the CLANNAD visual novel, released before the game even came out on December 28, 2003. It contains 6 songs in total, and exactly 1 year later, a sequel was released called Sorarado Append, Masai's Age. Another running joke where several characters question how old Masai really is. The best assumption we have to go off of is Sunohara's, who places her age somewhere between 23 and 99. So there's that. The hill represents life. The long, winding hill to school is one of the first uses of symbolism we see in CLANNAD. The game and the anime start with Tomoya giving Nagisa the courage she needs to keep walking up the hill, serving as the beginning of their lives together. Later on in the story, when Nagisa passes away, we're brought back to the hill where we find Tomoya standing still, alluding to the 5 years of stagnation he's about to go through, while Nagisa turns around and walks back down, showing us definitively that her life has come to an end. Yukito, Kyosuke, and Kaneko cameos. In episode 6 of the anime, you can see Yukito from Air sitting down in the background about 20 minutes in. We also see Kaneko from Tomoyo After appear as the girl who Sunohara tries to hit on before being stopped by Tomoyo. I doubt that she and Takafumi even know each other in this universe, but regardless, that's pretty funny. Finally, in episode 17, one of the gang members who corner Tomoya and Tomoyo at the school gate bears a passing resemblance to Kyosuke from Little Busters. It's feasible that this was a reference to him, but it's not concrete like the other two. Anthologies. The CLANNAD anthology comic was a backer reward for Sekai's Kickstarter, and today it can be purchased standalone for $15, 13 digitally. It contains 3 stories, one following Tomoya and Tomoyo, one following Tomoya, Ushio, and Nagisa, and one following the whole high school gang going ghost busting in the school at night. Tier 5. Boil the dough balls and cook them for 2 to 3 minutes after they float. I am not sure what this says, or that's what I would say if someone in the Discord didn't translate it for me. It says Ushio's Lullaby. It's a version of the track The Place Where Wishes Come True that has lyrics. You probably wouldn't recognize it if you heard it, and that's because it's a relatively recent release that wasn't featured in the visual novel or the anime. It's part of a 2017 album by Jun Maeda called Long Long Love Song. This might have been for the best though, because with lyrics like these, this song might have killed me if it played in the anime. It's alright if it's not now, but someday I want to tell you about the days I spent with your mommy. Oh god. It's alright if it's not now, but someday when you've grown so much, I want you to come with daddy to the beach. I'm sure by then you'll look just like your mommy, and I want to watch the ocean waves next to you just like on that day. Ah, damn it, that is so sad. AI Space. In more lighthearted news, did you know that CLANNAD had its own MMO? Well, kind of. It was called AI Space, and featured locations from 3 different visual novels, Da Capo 2, Shuffle, and CLANNAD. It's classified as an MMOSG, or massively multiplayer online social game. Looks like people just made a character, hopped into the world, and just hung out with each other. If you grew up the same way I did, then I guess you could just call it like Anime Webkins. It was released on October 15th, 2008, and was permanently shut down on June 30th, 2011, which explains why all the footage of this game out there really sucks. Bad endings. So, like any visual novel, CLANNAD has bad endings for if you screw up a route. I've never actually seen any of them, so I went back into the game and purposely messed up a bunch of crucial choices, and here's what I found. Starting with Tomoyo, you can get her to resign to a life of complacency with you by selecting Things Are Fine Like This on May 5th. Tomoya doesn't feel any obligation to help her with the election, and she loses to some random dude. Tomoyo then throws herself at Tomoya as if to reassure her that he's enough. Later on, she says she'll drop out of school when Tomoya graduates so they can live super shitty lives together, because because why try to do anything more in life when you have each other, right? With Kotomi's, I gave up on the last possible choice and left her garden unfinished, to which Tomoya says it's pointless, and he walks back home with the feeling that he'll never come back again. Then we get one of two generic bad endings that I found. The first one has Tomoya sitting in an empty classroom wondering if his life will ever change as he closes his eyes, stating that time is his only ally. Generic bad ending 2 is when he wakes up at home and scorns his family situation, saying that he doesn't have one or anyone else. He starts to think about his future but shuts it down by saying it's bothersome. He just wants to live carefree forever, even if it means being alone for his entire life. He thinks that might actually be terrible, but as he stands up to get dressed, fatigue takes over and he flops back down on his bed, hoping that when he wakes up, something will change. Back to Kotomi, if you just watch like an asshole while she talks to her parents' coworker instead of instantly intervening, on May 4th, she breaks up with you. She says that she needs to study more and more and won't have any time for this. Behavior that we know is only to atone for her parents' deaths, but Tomoya isn't aware of that yet and lets her go. We then get generic bad ending 1. For Kyo's route, I did everything right except for buying the wrong pendant, which caused Tomoya to break up with Ryo on the spot after the rain scene with Kyo. This leads to him keeping his distance from both of them. It hurt him a lot at first to ignore them, but as time went on, it felt normal. Empty, but normal. It then gives us generic bad ending 2. I also tried to screw up Kappe's route and see if he actually dies, but unfortunately no such luck. You just never see him again and then immediately get generic bad ending 2. With Fuko's route, I had Akio carry Fuko up the hill instead of myself, which fails you because I guess your connection to Fuko isn't strong enough to remember her when the time comes. It ends with the part where she brings Tomoya and Nagasa's hands together, except this time there's no big revelation afterwards, and all Tomoya hears is thank you very much as Fuko disappears forever. For Nagasa's route, I picked a choice that only a sociopath would choose and told Akio that he's a terrible father. Tomoya then says he'll help out Nagasa by himself. He fails, and then we have this awful scene where he's trying to comfort her in the drama club room. He keeps saying that he'll be the one to save her as she just sits there in silence. Alright, that's enough of those for one lifetime. Nagasa is the soulless robot. This is the very plausible theory that the second robot that Ushio and Tomoya tried to build and bring to life in the illusionary world was supposed to represent Nagasa. They build the body, a soul never gives it life, and then the two bury it while Ushio comforts Tomoya. The Past Path. The Past Path is a fan-made CLANNAD visual novel released in 2011 that follows Tomoya's father while he was in high school. Fuko suffered brain damage. So this was put on the Iceberg originally because it's a fan theory, but believe it or not, there's a lot of ironic truth to it. During an interview with Jun Maeda about CLANNAD, he stated that Fuko was originally supposed to be a calm, big sister type character, but that all went out the window when he saw her finished character design was short and cute. He then decided to pivot to a quiet and reserved personality, but he felt that was too boring. In an attempt to make her more entertaining, he created the bubbly, energetic, and really freaking stupid character we know and love today. Tier 6. Ladle the balls. Sorry. Tier 6. Ladle the balls out of the water and lay them on a paper towel-lined plate. Nagasa predicted the end. After Nagasa performs her play, which is essentially a retelling of the illusionary world story, she mentions to Tomoya that she remembered the rest of it. She says the girl and the robot leave the sad, lonely world they were in to travel to a warm one full of people far away. And at the end of their journey, they sing a song. Sound familiar? Because unbeknownst to the reader at the time, that's exactly how this long journey comes to an end. Tomoya is Maeda's waifu. According to interviews, Tomoya's characteristics align very heavily with his own personal preferences. He likes aggressive characters who lead the story along, just like her. And when asked to rate his difficulty writing her out of 5, he gave it a 0.5. Because apparently he would just talk to himself while writing her and whatever popped into his head first fit her character. Pretty neat. Lost Winter. CLANNAD Lost Winter is another fan-made visual novel that was released back in 2010. It follows Ushio as a young adult, and unlike The Past Path, this game doesn't have an English translation yet. All endings are canon. In the visual novel, collecting all the light orbs is what allows the true ending to occur. If the true ending is canon, which it undoubtedly is, then at minimum, every ending where you obtain a light orb is canon too. It's not much of a stretch to include the others in there too, but I'm not 100% sure that the writers intended for something like Jet Saito to be taken so seriously. Either way, this This is what I tell myself when I start feeling sad about there never being a Kyo After story. Cancelled Kyo After. Kyo After is a concept that we know has been tossed around at Key a few times, specifically with this 2014 tweet from scenario writer Kai, who said this: "It's CLANNAD's 10th anniversary, so I'm throwing it out in commemoration. The sealed plan, Kyo After. The reason for the seal? After the release, I will definitely be stabbed." Now, this could either be hesitancy to make the game because he thinks fans wouldn't like it, or he's poking fun at the fact that in 2003 he actually was stabbed while writing for Kyo's route in CLANNAD and had to take time away from working on the game to recover. Good news is that he's totally fine today. Tier 7. Skewer 3 to 5 dongo and lightly brown them in a non-stick frying pan. What happened to the bad end world? So, remember how Tomoya left the world where Ushio and Nagisa died to live in a new one where they're both alive? Well, that implies that this sad world may still exist out there somewhere. In the recap OVA for After Story, Tomoya even refers to it as the other world, which gives this theory at least some ground to stand on. Spooky. Clan. This is the actual Irish word for family, and what Jun Maeda probably meant to call this game all along. Honestly though, I think CLANNAD has a lot more personality to it than stupid-ass Clan. Anna is a ripoff. Anarchy Gordon, a song that goes by many names but we'll just call it this, is a Scottish folk song that was first put into print sometime in the early 1800s. It tells the story of Jeannie, spelled like this, who falls in love with this dude, Anarchy Gordon, but her father is trying to marry her off to this wealthy guy named Lord Sultan. The dad is a huge dick to his daughter, and the day of the wedding, Jeannie loses all hope and just dies of a broken heart. Anarchy then returns from sea, hears the news, then dies from the same pain after he sees her. CLANNAD's track Anna took this very sad Romeo and Juliet-ass song and morphed it into a very touching beacon of optimism and admittedly laughter. I mean, look at those lyrics. Regardless, like the Dandelion Girl, I find it endlessly fascinating to see where CLANNAD took its inspiration from. If you'd like to compare the two tracks, I highly recommend using the, sorry if I butcher this, Lorena McKinnon version. It's the version of the song that sounds the most like Anna in my opinion. Also, huge thanks to Fujiki for bringing this to my attention with their comment on the Fuko video. Tier 8. Enjoy dongo while they're still warm on their own or with a special sauce. CLANNAD got a police officer banned. So, this is a thing that happened and aired on local news.
Only Channel 9 learned an officer just sent a text with a racial slur to his supervisor.
So he had this meme of Fuko that contained the no-no word, and he sent it to his supervisor while bragging to him about winning $32 from the lottery. Real life is insane. Chubby Sanai. Originally, Sanai was supposed to be very chubby, as seen in this concept art here, but the idea was ultimately scrapped. It was kicked around that Tomoya's choices in the game could potentially make Sanai gain a bunch of weight throughout the story, but this was scrapped too. Wolf Boy. Very little is known about this guy, except for the fact that he was raised by wolves and would not wear clothes at school because he was not accustomed to wearing them. His concept art bears a striking resemblance to Kappe, so it seems like he was repurposed into him. Steam version of CLANNAD changed a lot of the music. 14 songs from the original game were remade for the Steam release of CLANNAD in 2015. They include Ushio, That's Like the Wind, Kotomi's theme, which I refuse to pronounce, Spring Breeze, The Day's Leisure, Tea Party in the Reference Room, Dumb, whose remix is also known as Sunohara Dubstep by the community, A Pair of Idiots, Return to Ashes, Roaring Tides, White Clovers, Spring Breeze Afternoon, Spring Breeze Tempo Up, and Spring Breeze Piano. Out of all of them, the only one where I couldn't immediately tell the difference was with Kotomi's theme, but after listening closely, the Steam version seems to have much more reverb. I highly recommend giving these a listen if you haven't already, they're pretty interesting. Fun fact, since I first experienced CLANNAD through the Steam version of the game, the first versions of these songs I ever heard were these remixes. Unused OST. Lurking in the depths of Disc 3 of CLANNAD's original soundtrack are Unused Track 1 and Unused Track 2. They're both pretty upbeat and not that bad. But what I find interesting is how Track 1, at least to me, seems to have a striking resemblance to the insert song Over from the anime. If you don't remember, that's the song that plays during the tennis match where Tomoya shuts down all the harem stuff that's been going on in the last few episodes. You might listen to the two of them back to back and think I'm crazy, but who knows. Maybe it was repurposed into that song. Tier 9. To reheat dongos, simply pop them in the microwave for 15 to 30 seconds until they're warmed through. OST in a news report. In 2014, a Peruvian news station aired a story about families living in poverty not being able to afford Christmas presents for their children. I didn't understand a single word they said, but that did not make this any easier to watch. Throughout the story, though, they used both the piano version of Spring Breeze and White Clovers from the CLANNAD soundtrack. If you're wondering how it was even possible that I came across this, well, I didn't. The Iceberg's creator discovered it on a whim while researching for a presentation about poverty. This is about as deep of a deep cut as a deep cut can be.
A ver, ¿ese es tu robot? ¿De quién es?
CLANNAD at the Olympics. If CLANNAD music being played for a news segment blew your mind, how would you feel about CLANNAD music being played at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics? We all know that anime had a big presence at our most recent Olympic Games, but unless your eyes were glued to the screen during an intermission for equestrian dressage, I don't even know what that is, you would have missed it. Whoever was rocking that acoustic though, you knocked it out of the park. Have a quick listen. CLANNAD man. Shortly after Kai was stabbed, Jun Maeda suggested to him that he could finish Kyo's route for him. From this conversation came the joke that there could be a character named CLANNAD man, who is a really lame superhero with powers like Clannadic Brush, which lets him brush his teeth really fast, and Clannadic Cleanliness, which lets him clean his room very quickly. Anyways, in Maeda's version of Kyo's story, the two sisters would have been somehow trapped in a burning building and CLANNAD man would have saved them. I don't know how, I don't know why. All I can say is I'm really sad that they didn't go through with this. Maeda's original concept. In an interview, Maeda said that he came up with the original concept for CLANNAD soon after he finished Air. He thought of Air as more of a personal project, so he wanted to appeal to a large group of people with CLANNAD and make something truly entertaining. He then put this vision into words by saying this: I wanted to present a story about a town and its people and the relationship between those people. Just a quick heads up, this next theory has some major spoilers for Little Busters, so timestamp, and I guess I'll give you like 5 seconds.
Just waiting for the Little Busters. Oh yeah.
The light orbs created the artificial world of Little Busters. This theory suggests that CLANNAD's world and the world of Little Busters are connected, because both stories feature artificial worlds created because of a wish. You know, I thought I'd have more to say about this, but I really don't. I hope the potential spoiler was worth it. Photon Cookbook. This is only here to appease the people of the CLANNAD Discord who thought that this was really funny. There is, unfortunately, no official Photon Cookbook. However, I did find this recipe for roasted wild boar on the internet. Hopefully that's good enough. Tier 10. You can store Dongo in an airtight container for up to 2 days at room temperature. Tomoya broke his shoulder himself. I'm just imagining him sitting in his room one day and being like, I have an idea. Snap. Anyways, Tomoya likes punching walls when he thinks about his father. He does it twice in the anime and has to hold himself back from doing it a third time in the visual novel. He also has a very skewed view of his dad that wouldn't put him past being an unreliable narrator. Therefore, the theory goes that he might have broken his shoulder while taking his anger out on a wall rather than in a brawl with his dad. Either way, the story works, so pick your own interpretation. It is worth mentioning that the CLANNAD movie frames the whole thing as an accident. Let's make babies. This is probably the second most cursed thing I know about CLANNAD. So, among the many decade-old CLANNAD abridged videos that exist out there, there is but one that stands among them as the king. A CLANNAD-themed parody of Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe, where all the female leads in the story try to have Tomoya's kids. Everyone's voices are ear-piercing and the lyrics will make you die of secondhand embarrassment, but I do not care.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy. I'll drop my panties, so let's make babies.
I genuinely find this hilarious. As of right now, it's sitting at a criminally low 15,000 views, so on the off chance that this video gets any amount of attention, I'd like for all of you to go fix that. CLANNAD. This is actually the most cursed thing I know about CLANNAD, and every day I wish I could forget that it exists. But all my knowledge must be exposed for the sake of this video. So now I gotta find some way to talk about this without getting murdered by YouTube's new rules. Well, this is an unlicensed adult film retelling of the first season of CLANNAD, a very bad retelling. Interspersed throughout are naughty things like sex, fucking, and intercourse. You've got stuff like this in scenes where they never were before, like Tomoya and Kyo getting locked in the storage shed. Then afterwards, Kyo's just like, Lamau, let's forget that ever happened. So they do. Then they recreate the scene where Tomoya chooses Nagasa over the other girls at the tennis match. Then they proceed to go home and immediately start fucking. I should just stop talking. This has been the CLANNAD Iceberg. See you next time when we'll be talking about anything but CLANNAD. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go listen to my Hurry Starfish hip-hop remix so that I can feel better. Special thanks to Silent Secondary, Mr. Chocolate Salmon, and Volume Warning.
Dane Skip!
As well as
Make it taller!
and the rest of my wonderful patrons.